You're now tuned in to Brutally Uncut with me, your host, Tameeka Henry. Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Brutally Uncut. As many of you saw on social media, this episode is a little touchy, but I think it's one that deserves discussion. This episode we're going to talk about, is it ever okay to discipline other people's kids? And for some, I can understand why the question is a little provocative. It makes people feel uncomfortable, but in some cases, it also makes them feel a little uncertain because you want your kids to be raised right. You want them to have the best experiences and the best morals in order to raise them as the best individual that they can be. But it becomes touchy when other people get involved because do you want other people telling your child what to do? Are you okay with someone sternly telling your child not to do something? And then the bigger question is, are you okay with someone spanking your kid, whether it be pinching their ears, slapping them, sometimes using a belt to their bottom in some drastic cases? So we have to ask ourselves as individuals as well as parents, which is why I invited two parents to join me for this episode just to get some real-life perspective on what their thoughts are and some of their experiences with their own children. Our first guest, Jamel Lamar, who is someone that I know for some years now. He is 33 years old. He's a proud father of one, a single parent. He was born and raised and currently residing in Brooklyn, New York. He's a graduate of Medgar Evers College, yes, with an associate's in mass communications and a bachelor's in social behavior sciences. So I am interested in hearing his perspective on this topic. Currently, he's the executive producer and host of an upcoming lifestyle television show on MNN and BCAT called The Renaissance, as well as a brand consultant for companies like Samsung, Verizon, and so forth. If you're interested in reaching out to Jamel after the segment, definitely feel free to reach out to him at Playboy11233. That's one of our guests, and he has one son, and he's 4 years old. Our other guest, we have Deb from Brooklyn. She has two kids. One child is 2 years old, and the other one is 3 years old. Thank you, both of you, for joining us for this episode.
Thank you for the invite, man. This is something that, like, when you approached me about it, I was like, man, this is gonna be a big discussion. So I'm definitely glad to be in some way involved.
Great. Well, I'm excited to talk to both of you. So let's just jump right in. As I said before, it is a very provocative topic, and speaking to some of the people on social media, I think the responses were all the same. You saw the repost that I posted recently with the two people that commented on my Instagram where they said that verbally it was okay, but when it came to physical discipline from someone other than a parent, that it was no good because they felt like some people just don't have limits. Do you feel this way?
It really depends on the situation, because when you say anybody outside of the parent, like me, I allow my moms, which is my son's grandmother, to physically discipline him when he's acting right. That's because
Agreed.
I
do
trust
the same.
my mother. I trust my mother. And I also allow my father to do the same. I trust both of them with their judgment on when it's time to put their hands to his backside. At the same time, if it's somebody like, say, his teacher, then no, that's a no-no. Or if it's a close family friend, that's a no-no. Like, I'm not with it. Don't put your hands on my child because, some people don't know what your line is. When you're raising your children, you have certain lines that somebody may not agree with, or they just maybe a little out there when it comes to disciplining. So it really depends on the person and the situation, in my opinion, for the most part.
Yeah, and one situation that I referenced just going back to what you said about like family, friends, is that, you know, growing up in a household, specifically a West Indian household, we will always hear stories about, yeah, when I was acting bad, the family friend would beat me, then I would go home and my mom would beat me again, and my aunt would beat me, and my big sister would beat me, and you'd be like, damn. Like, all of those lashes? All of those lashes for one thing, and you be thinking, like, damn, that could never be me. Like, I don't know if I would be okay with the neighbor beating me, you know what I mean? But now, in today's world, a story like that is very far and few, because I feel like the new generation, we're a little sensitive when it comes to being physical with children, especially when it's our own kids or maybe a close relative, and having like a family friend step in and be a physical disciplinary to that child, mainly because we see situations where, you know, nannies take advantage and downright just abuse children, or we've heard of, because even with those same stories, in relatives telling those stories, I've also heard them express those memories with like frustration and slight anger, because sometimes there was a relative that took it too far, or they felt like there was a relative that was, you know, making them the black sheep or taking advantage of them in some way because they didn't necessarily like them for whatever reason. So again, like it becomes a very, very touchy subject. And I know you said that you're okay with family doing it, but, like, what about school? Because I know, like, in schools they used to physically touch children, whatever it's like a slap on the hand, or, you know, even, you know, putting them in timeout, or just speaking to them in a very aggressive tone. Deb, I want to hear your thoughts.
Sure. Absolutely. You know, in the school setting, absolutely not. And I went to college for education. I got my BA in education. I got my master's in history. And, you know, unfortunately, I work at Citigroup. I'm doing corporate America. But, you know, it was never my intention to go in a class. And I have taught in a classroom. I have taught third grade. And it was never my intention to even think to put my hands on a child. It's like, it's your, you know, third graders are 8, 9-year-olds. They get on your nerves. They do whatever they can possibly do to irk you. But for me to put my hands on someone's child, that just doesn't even make sense. There's so many ways to get to a kid rather than hit them or physically discipline them. Verbally disciplining, I can understand that, because you have to set some type of boundary. But I can't imagine anyone touching my child in school. That is completely, there's no reason for it. Yes, Tameeka, I grew up in the same type of household, a Jamaican household, where, you know, my mom went to Catholic school, my dad went to Catholic school. They got beat in school for whatever reason, and that was acceptable. It's not acceptable here. There's no reason why you should touch my child. Like I was telling you, Tameeka, earlier, my son is mild on the ASD spectrum. He does have signs of autism that he's getting therapy for, and it's very difficult to deal with a kid that, you know, doesn't know those type of boundaries. But this is what professionals are for. This is what we go to school for. This is what we understand social and behavioral perspectives, so that we can be in that field and know how to handle children and that, you know, in that setting. But absolutely not. No teacher is touching my child. Like that's not.
If I could chime in a little bit, I definitely agree with Deb. Like me being a father, I'm always, to the most part, like the perfect gentleman. But the very second anybody outside of, say, my mom or my dad feels like they need to lay their hands or put their hands anywhere on my child, I lose it. Just because that to me is my blessing, my gift. And then it's like I went to Catholic school, and just like you guys, I do have a very strong Caribbean background, but as well as I have a very strong Southern background. So with that, you know, I mean, I'm all with, like, it takes a community to raise a child. I'm all with that, but it's still a respect you pay to the parents.
Exactly.
And which how you do things, and so because the parents are they're the final say. So for any teacher or anybody in a school setting to feel like it's okay just to, and that was the one thing I disliked about Catholic schools. They felt like they can put their hands or rulers on the children. My dad was like the top person, and he couldn't stand it. He took me out of Catholic school just because of that. He was like, I'll be damned if somebody's going to put their hands on my son. I'm going to go to jail.
Yeah.
So, and it's passed down with that attitude, like, I'm the same way. I'll be damned if somebody's going to put their hands on my son. I will do life in prison and do it with a smile.
Well, me personally, I don't have children, but I agree with everything you guys are saying. Like, to verbally if I had a child, someone was verbally disciplining my child, because I know I've had to verbally discipline a child. It's more than likely a relative. I've never verbally or physically disciplined a child that was not related to me, because I don't know, I just get a little touchy about that. And as you someone said previously, what's good for some is not good for all. And some people don't believe in speaking too loudly to their children. Some people don't believe in hitting their children. Some people don't believe in doing certain things to your children. So you have to walk a fine line when you deal with other people's kids, because at the end of the day, it's not your kids. But I wanted to ask you guys directly, like, have you ever been in a situation where someone physically or verbally disciplined your child and you felt like uneasy, like you knew it had to be done, or maybe you weren't around at the time? Maybe it was a parent, maybe a cousin, maybe the child was like writing on the wall, or maybe they threw their phone on the floor and it broke, and you just and the adult that was in charge at the time had to come to you and say, yeah, I had to tell your kid something. I just wanted to let you know. Like, have you ever been in that situation?
I personally have not. I mean, I'm blessed to have a very well behaved child. I mean, he is mischievous once in a while, but what 4-year-old isn't? But he's not he's not to the point where, like, for him, he watches like WWE wrestling, so I might get on him every now and then for trying to do a wrestling move with his cousin. But it's never nothing too serious. So I haven't been in situations like that. But for anybody who does know me, that's definitely a no-no. You're looking for a hell of a war if you was to cross that line with me.
Yeah, and I feel like even verbally disciplining a child, I feel like sometimes there's a limit with that too, because there are some parents and some people that believe in basically talking down to children when they have to discipline them, or even cursing at them. And I don't feel like, certain language is necessary when speaking to a child, especially when a child is very small, because that could mess with their psychological, and then just making them feel bad, for something that could have been easily handled in an adult manner. And another thing that I want to go into after your comment, Deb, is to go into, like, if someone does have to discipline your child, like, what's the right way to do it?
So I want to say I'm not naive to certain situations. Like my son, we went to a birthday party recently, and it was like in it's a place called Williamsburg. They have like a little pool where it's like a dipping pool. The kids, go in, they take the balls out, they do all kinds of stuff. My son loves water, so he's going in, and he's practically jumping in the water, and I see him, and I'm like, oh hell! And I just ran over. And the parent that was sitting right there, she pulled him back. And she said, oh, no, sweetie, don't do that, She didn't do it maliciously. She was doing it to protect him. Now, that is, I think that's a different story, because if you're doing something to help my son, I don't consider that disciplining. You know what I'm saying? That's something to keep him out of danger. And I think that's probably the only line I will draw. If there's something, because, of course, I have my 2-year-old and my 3-year-old. It gets a little hectic sometimes. If someone is pulling my son, not in a malicious way, but just to help him, and I see that, then that's different. You know what I'm saying? That's where I think that's where my fine line is. But if you're, seeing him do something and you're like, no, you can't do that, and you're grabbing my son or my daughter, and no, that's not happening. At that point, that's when you come to me and you say, who's the parent of this child and such and such and such? Because I've done that to kids. Exactly. I have done that to kids. who is this child's parent and where are they? That's my first instinct. Why is this kid climbing up a wall? Where is your parent? That type of thing. Yeah. That's where you want to do it. But if you see the kid in a dangerous situation, yes, you're going to, as a parent or even a person, that's your instinct to make sure that kid stays out of danger. But other than that, that's kind of where I draw the line. And like I was saying to you earlier, it's like you have situations where parents will scold you for not thinking you're not disciplining your child the right way. And, I had my son, he had his little tantrum. I didn't want to give him candy. He had his little tantrum, dropped out on the floor, and I left him there. And I said, you know what? I'm not stooping to your level, kid. You want to sit here and have a tantrum? Go ahead. Not a problem. And I walked away. And the parent came to me and said, you're not going to pick him up? Absolutely not. I'm going to leave him right there. And when he's ready to not have an issue, he can get up. And guess what he did? He got up. So some parents, we're parents. We understand that type of situation, but my discipline may not be your discipline. You know what I'm saying? And you got to make sure you have to know exactly what, Melissa, you have to know that boundary. And you're not a mind reader, but you definitely have to know that boundary.
I agree.
I mean, me personally, I've observed certain parents that, they seem like to have no boundaries. Like, I've seen parents be like, what the fuck you doing? Are you a fucking idiot? Like, and I'm looking like, yo, is it that serious? Like, to a point you gotta, like, every 2 or 3 words is fuck, shit, you ass. Like me, I personally do everything in my human strength to not use any profanity around my son, because at the end of the day, that's the one thing, especially in the African American community, the young African American boys, young men, don't know how to express themselves. And then the first thing is, well, where do they get it from? And it's like, well, they're following an example of their parents or family members or friends they're around. So when they have all of these, examples around them, they think it's a normal and an okay thing when it isn't. One thing I always, encourage my son to do is express himself, but do it in a gentleman manner. Mm-hmm. My father and grandfather, they raised me to be a gentleman, to know how to talk, to know how to express myself without using any kind of foul language. Like, my father still looks at me with a look if I even dare curse at him. I'm 33 and he's like in his 50s, and if I even say damn, he's looking at me like,
boy, who you talking to?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, all right, I got to check myself. But I'm appreciative of that, because it's like, that's the example. Like, if you're going to talk to anybody, you got to know how to express yourself. And, that's the one thing I loved about my father. Like, he always set an example. Now, he may not always been right. I won't sugarcoat it. But he tried to set the best example he could, so I would not be walking around these days with my pants off my behind, or wearing sweats that were just too damn tight, or, just looking like a respectable young man, rather than a hood that just didn't know their waist size or how to dress, or don't know how to, be a gentleman. So, in a lot of cases, a lot of these younger kids who they get older to be disrespectful, they learn it from somewhere, and that's, at home, where they're around a bunch of ill-mannered people who are not showing them. I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. I heard somebody stop.
Yeah, and bad influences as well.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like
we digressed a little bit, but I wanna get back on track a little bit and talk about another situation where what if, I know your kids are a little bit young, but what if you were in a situation where your kid was being bullied? And before you answer, I've heard of situations and even seen situations where a child was being bullied in school or maybe in a neighborhood, and another parent, instead of speaking to that the child who is doing the bullying, their parent, they actually approach the child themselves. And they approach the child and say, hey, don't put your hands on my kids anymore, or leave my child alone, you're affecting them. Or they would physically harm that child. So, what is the best approach when you're dealing with a situation like that? In school, I think the easiest response is speak to a teacher or speak to an administrator and see what you can do about, helping the situation. But what if it's on the block? Like, what if you have one of those parents, as we've seen and as Jamel touched on, those parents that just don't care and it's like, so what, my son did that, so what, that's what your son is? Or if they're calling your son a name, well, maybe he is that. So don't say anything to me or my son.
I gotta tell you, Tameeka, I've only been a parent for about 3 years now, and I always have this conversation with my friends. Like, I don't know how I can handle someone bothering my kid. Like, it's just so, like, your animal instinct in you. The first thing you want to do is go find this kid, right? But the moral person that you are, and that you hopefully had that type of raising and upbringing, you got to go to the source. Now, the source being the parent, whatever it is, and if the parent is just as ignorant as the child, what can you really do? You can't punch the parent out. Like, what can you truly do? Like, and there's situations, there are situations where, it's exactly what you said to me. They will come up to the school, they will fight the parent, they will do all kinds of stuff. But I can't even answer that question yet, because I honestly don't know what I would do. But I would say my first instinct is to go to the parent. If the parent is just beyond reason, I would just have to do what I can do to teach my son and my daughter to do what is right. Defend themselves. If you gotta bust ass, you gotta bust ass. I hate to say it like that. I really hate to say it like that, but you can't swear for your children. You're not with your children 24 hours of the day. You can't protect them all the time. So you have to do what you got to do to make sure your kid is protected. And if that means, and my husband will probably say differently. My husband will probably say, yo, I can do whatever I got to do. But I stop there.
I mean, I agree with you 100%. But at the same time, too, looking at today's society and a lot of these children, like, I mean, in my day, when I was young, when I was going to junior high school or high school, whatever, if you got a problem, you shoot the fair one. Right. These days, ain't no such thing as a fair one. Like,
you would tell your 4-year-old to shoot the fair one?
I mean, listen. I mean, no. I wouldn't tell. I'm thinking, like, if he had a problem like that, then he's somewhere around 12. Anywhere from 10 to maybe 13. And then, yes, I mean, I agree with Deb where I would definitely want to have a sit-down with the parent. And I'll take it old school. Like, I would invite him over for dinner or something so we can have a conversation and we can find, let's not point fingers. Let's find out what the problem is. Let's look for options, and let's find a resolution. Now, the problem is, if there's a problem where the parent is just ignorant and they're thinking like a 13 and 14-year-old, well, if what problem does your child have with mine? And that can't be resolved. These are children. These are not, and then it's something that's probably so small, it's like, for what? But then it carries on to, well, I know what. Like,
and then you got to do what's best for your child. If you have to get your child out of that situation, then so be it. Exactly. I personally think. I mean, you're not going to be changing schools every 2 seconds, but you don't want your child in fear of going to school or any of that situation. Then you got to take it to the next step. But I agree with you, for real.
Yeah, and then but I mean, you have these parents who make a small situation worse, and they encourage it, and it's like, all right, so you're encouraging this, and then something happens where somebody feel like they need to bring a gun to school. And then it's like, oh, what, like, come on now. A lot of this could be stopped if parents step in and just say, like, yo, cut it out. What are you doing it for? Yeah. So, you know what I mean? Like, is it and then once it's seen, it's like, yeah, then it's left alone. Then it's squared away because it's like, like I said, it's through example. If your child sees that, like, yo, my pops or my mom or my uncles or whoever is taking that role is saying that, yo, this is stupid and maybe I should just step away from it, then, you know what I mean? It's like, all right, you know what, maybe I was going at it all wrong or I was doing the wrong thing, trying to look cool, but I was actually looking like a fool. So let me do something a little different. But when you got the ignorant parent saying, oh, yeah, go ahead, you know what I mean, you got to do what you got to do, I'm like, oh, nah. You're making the situation worse.
Yeah, and with me, I'm going to just start wrapping up the segment and basically say that, number one, I hate ill-mannered children. I hate children that cuss. I hate children that do not know how to behave themselves. Like, if you do not have a medical behavioral problem that has been identified, like, you need to be disciplined or you need some manners. I'm a little old school when it comes to that. But as far as like someone disciplining my child, if I had a child to that point when I do have a child, I agree with everything that you guys are saying. Physically is no way for me, and I don't even know if I would allow it with family. With my mom, with my dad, probably. But with other family members, I don't know. Even though, like, we were disciplined from our aunts when we were kids, like, whether it be a spanking or a beating because we did something wrong, I just feel like, you should just come to me, tell me what the problem is. But I also don't want my kids to feel like I could do whatever I want around this family member and then you're just going to tell my mom and she's not going to do anything. You know what I mean? Because there are some kids that have that dilemma where they'll use that to their advantage. But for me, I feel like I'm going to try to uphold it as much as possible so my kids are not misbehaved when they're in someone else's house or misbehaved when they're around another relative because they were trained. And as my grandmother would say, they weren't dragged up. They were trained. They were brought up. So, like that's my dilemma when it comes to that. But have I ever disciplined a child? Yes, I've disciplined a child. Sometimes if it was a relative, physically, yes, I spanked them because they misbehaved. but someone who is not a relative, no, I would never put my hands on someone who is not a relative's child. And even today, as I'm older, I don't even know if I would do that still because, again, people are very sensitive when it comes to their children. Not everyone believes in physical discipline. And then speaking to a child, again, as I mentioned before, there are boundaries because there are some people, as Jamel and Deborah mentioned, that don't have a filter, and they would tell your kids, shut the F up, bring your ass over there, or don't say shit, speaking to them as if they were an adult that they had a confrontation with. And I feel like if you're an adult in a situation, remain an adult in the situation and understand that you're talking to a child. So there are certain limitations and things that you need to think about when dealing with children as a whole when it comes to disciplining and just even raising young children in America and across the globe. Like, we just need to be mindful of what we say and what we do around kids because everything that we do reflects in their behavior and they pick up these different characteristics and they use it. When you tell them to do something that they don't necessarily think is right and you scream and you hit them, guess what? When someone in class does something to them that they don't necessarily agree with or they think is not right, what are they going to do? They're going to scream, they're going to cuss, they're going to start hitting those kids. So, show the world who you are through your children. Make your children be a reflection of who you are and the morals that you instill in them. And we're going to end off this segment. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this segment. I learned so much from you. Thank you for sharing your experiences. I appreciate you. This will be up and running October 31st on my site, my social media channels. I'll put up all the information within the blog post, Jamel's information and Deborah's information as well. Feel free to comment and tell us what you think. If you have any additional comments or statements that you guys want to make regarding the segment, feel free to join in the conversation. And with that being said, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Brutally Uncut. Watch out next month and see what the next episode is going to be about. And I'm looking forward to having another discussion with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Love being part of the show.
You're now tuned in to Brutally Uncut with me, your host, Tameeka Henry.